The betrayal didn't arrive with a scream. It arrived in the dead silence of my home office at 2:43 in the morning. I was finalizing the custom schedules for Project Sovereign, a $15 million deal I'd spent 2 years building. The monitor hummed, then blinked. Black. A red box flashed. Access denied. User credentials revoked. I stared at the dark screen, confused. Then my phone pinged. An email from my father. Subject: restructuring notice. I opened it, and the words burned into my eyes. Effective immediately. Tyler will lead. Global logistics require a man's steady hand. He hadn't just fired me. He had erased me. Before we dive into the wreckage, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. The next morning, I walked into the Peterson Logistics headquarters at 8 a.m. sharp. I wore the same navy blazer I had worn when I negotiated the Jakarta port expansion, the one I had on when I secured the Rotterdam shipping lanes. I walked straight to the boardroom. Gary was already there, sitting at the head of the mahogany table, his back to the door, looking out at the Savannah River. My Aunt Patricia sat to his right, stirring her coffee with a tiny silver spoon, the clinking sound echoing in the silence like a countdown. And there was Tyler, my older brother, the man who had dropped out of 3 different technical colleges and once asked me if the Panama Canal was in Florida. He was spinning in my chair. "You're early," Gary said without turning around. "I expected you to take the day. I expected to be closing the Sovereign deal." I replied, my voice steady. "Why did my access get revoked?" "Dad?" Gary finally turned. He looked at me with that familiar mix of disappointment and dismissal. "We discussed this, Rosalie. The Sovereign partners are traditional Europeans. They don't do business with young women. It makes them uncomfortable." "That's a lie," I said. "Elena Sterling is the CEO of the Sovereign Group. She is a woman. Elena Sterling is a figurehead." Patricia chimed in, her voice like syrup laced with arsenic. "The real decisions are made by the board. And the board is men. Your father is just protecting the company's interests." "Protecting the company?" I looked at Tyler, who was now using my stress ball to play catch with himself. "By putting him in charge? Tyler doesn't know the difference between a bill of lading and a manifest." "Watch your tone," Gary snapped, slamming his hand on the table. "Your brother has vision. You have details. You're good at the paperwork. Rosalie, you always have been. But you lack the command presence required for this level." "So, what happens now?" I asked. Gary slid a single sheet of paper across the table. "We're not firing you. Your family. We found a role that better suits your skill set. Junior clerk. In the mailroom. The mailroom. The basement. Windowless. Damp. And smelling of old cardboard. It was a demotion so severe it was clearly designed to make me quit. They wanted me to storm out. They wanted me to make a scene so they could say, 'See, she's too emotional to lead.'" I looked at the paper. Then I looked at Tyler, who smirked and said, "Don't worry, Rosie. I'll make sure to forward you any birthday cards." I didn't storm out. I didn't cry. I picked up the paper. "Okay," I said. Gary blinked, confused by the lack of resistance. "Okay, if that's where the company needs me," I said, "then that's where I'll go." I turned and walked out. I went to my office, packed my personal items into a single box, and took the elevator down. Not to the lobby, but to the basement. Why did I stay? Why didn't I throw the box at their heads and walk away? Because survivors don't run. We wait. Standing in the fluorescent hum of the elevator, I felt the familiar weight of the invisible chain that survivors know too well. It's the instinct you develop when you grow up in a house where love is conditional and volatile. You learn to go still. You learn that fighting back only exposes your throat. My silence wasn't weakness. It was camouflage. For 24 years, I had learned to be quiet to avoid Gary's temper. I had learned to be invisible to avoid Patricia's criticism. I had learned to fix things in the dark so Tyler could shine in the light. They thought they were punishing me by putting me in the dark again. But they forgot one thing. The dark is where I do my best work. And the mailroom isn't just where the birthday cards go. It's where the contracts go. It's where the legal notices go. It's where the secrets live before they are shredded. They handed me the key to their own destruction. And they didn't even know it. I spent the next 2 weeks becoming a ghost in the machine of Peterson Logistics. My new office was a concrete box filled with the hum of the ventilation system and the smell of industrial toner. While the executives upstairs drank espresso and patted each other on the back, I sorted. Invoice to accounts payable. Legal notice to compliance. Junk mail to the shredder. It was repetitive, mindless work. But while my hands moved, my mind replayed the last 5 years in fast forward. They thought I was just the daughter who took good notes. They forgot I was the architect of their solvency. In 2021, when a container ship got stuck in the Suez Canal and threatened to bankrupt us, I didn't sleep for 3 days. I rerouted 20,000 tons of cargo through a secondary rail network I negotiated at 4 a.m. Tyler was at a bachelor party in Vegas. In 2022, when we lost the Asian market share, I wrote the Deepwater Protocol, a proprietary logistics algorithm that predicted port congestion 3 days before it happened. Gary took the credit in Forbes. I took a bonus that didn't even cover my rent. I wasn't just an employee. I was the structural integrity of the entire building. And they had just taken a sledgehammer to the load-bearing wall. The door to the mailroom banged open. Tyler walked in, holding a Starbucks cup and looking flushed. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask how I was adjusting to life underground. He tossed a file onto my sorting table. "Look this over," he said, checking his watch. "The sovereign lawyers are being a pain about the liability clauses. Fix it by 5. I looked at the file. "I'm a junior clerk." "Tyler, I don't have clearance for legal documents. Don't be a brat," he snapped. "Just do it. Dad's writing me about this deal. And I have a tea time at 3. He turned and left, leaving the scent of expensive cologne and incompetence hanging in the damp air. He was treating me like his personal safety net, just like he always had. He assumed I would fix his mess because I always did, because I craved the crumbs of validation they threw my way. But I wasn't hungry anymore. I picked up the file he left. I didn't fix it. I put it in the outgoing bin, unprocessed. Then I turned my attention to the bin next to it, the confidential, to-be-shredded bin. It was overflowing. Tyler and Gary were sloppy. They assumed the mailroom was a black hole where secrets went to die. They forgot I was the one holding the match. I started sifting. Past the failed inspection reports. Past the overdue tax notices. And then my hand froze. A thick, cream-colored envelope from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. It had been opened and discarded. Destined for the shredder. I pulled out the document. It was a patent application. Title: Automated Predictive Logistics System. I scanned the abstract. It was my code. It was the Deepwater Protocol. The algorithm I had written on my laptop. The one that saved the company. I looked at the inventor field. Name: Tyler Peterson. My breath hitched. They weren't just pushing me out. They were stealing my intellectual property. But there was more. Stapled to the back was a letter of intent from a massive conglomerate. Apex Global. It outlined a buyout offer for Peterson Logistics, contingent on the acquisition of the sovereign contract and the exclusive rights to the proprietary technology developed by Tyler Peterson. The picture snapped into focus with terrifying clarity. This wasn't about gender. It wasn't about tradition. It was a cash-out. Gary and Tyler were planning to sell the company the moment the sovereign deal was signed. They needed me out of the way so they could claim my work as their own, inflate the company's value, and walk away with millions while leaving me with nothing but a mailroom key. I stared at the signature line on the patent application. It was pending. It required a certified signature from the inventor to be finalized. A signature they hadn't sent yet because the certified request was sitting right here, in my hand. In the basement they banished me to. I didn't shred it. I folded the document and slid it into my bag. The next morning, the United States Postal Service delivered the final nail for my father's coffin. It came in the form of a certified letter addressed to Tyler Peterson, requiring a signature upon receipt. It was the confirmation from the patent office, the final step before the application could be processed. If Tyler signed this, he would legally claim ownership of my life's work. Dave, the mail carrier who had known me since I was an intern, leaned over the counter. Morning. Rosalie. Got a certified here for the big boss. Can you sign for it? Of course. Dave, I said. My hand didn't shake. I signed my name on the digital pad. Legally. I was a representative of the company. Legally. I was doing my job. I took the envelope. I didn't take it upstairs. I didn't notify Tyler. I walked it back to my desk, slid it open, and scanned every page into my personal encrypted cloud drive. Then, I filed the physical envelope in a box marked pending, long-term storage at the very bottom of a stack of archives from 1999. Tyler wouldn't find it. Tyler couldn't find his own car keys without assistance. They had banished me to the basement because they thought a woman belonged in a support role. They thought stripping me of my title stripped me of my power. But they forgot that the foundation of a skyscraper isn't the penthouse. It's the concrete poured deep underground. By putting me here, they hadn't buried me. They had planted me in the control room. Now, I needed an ally. I pulled up my old research files on the Sovereign Group. Gary and Tyler saw Elena Sterling as a checkbook. I knew her as a shark. I knew she had built Sovereign from the ground up after her own father left the business to her stepbrother. I knew she valued competence over bloodlines. And I knew she had a zero-tolerance policy for fraud. I couldn't email her from my work account. IT was monitoring everything. And I couldn't call her office. Her gatekeepers were formidable. But I remembered a detail from the due diligence phase 2 years ago. Elena didn't use corporate email for high-level strategy. She used a private, encrypted server. I had the address memorized. Saved for an emergency I hoped would never come. I opened my personal laptop. I drafted a new email. No subject line. No pleasantries. Just an attachment and 3 sentences. Ms. Sterling, please review the metadata on the Deepwater Protocol source code attached to the pending contract. You will find the author is not Tyler Peterson. You are about to purchase stolen goods. I attached the original code logs from my personal drive. Timestamped 2 years ago. Alongside the scanned patent application listing Tyler as the inventor. It was irrefutable proof of intellectual property theft and fraud. I hovered over the send button. This was the point of no return. Sending this wasn't just corporate sabotage. It was a declaration of war against my own family. I thought about Gary's email. Global logistics require a man. I thought about Tyler tossing the file on my desk. I hit send. I sat back in my creaky chair and waited. Upstairs. They were popping champagne. Celebrating a sale that was already dead. Down here. The real work was just beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I checked my encrypted email every hour. Nothing. Doubt started to creep in. Maybe Elena was part of the buyout. Maybe she didn't care who wrote the code. As long as the ships arrived on time. Maybe I had just handed my only leverage to the enemy. But at 5:45 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text message from an unlisted number. Pure fear. The Fisherman's Cafe. Caesar. Come alone. I grabbed my jacket and drove. The Savannah morning was thick with fog. The river smelling of salt and diesel. The Fisherman's Cafe was a dive bar that served breakfast to longshoremen and tugboat captains. It was the last place you'd expect to find a Fortune 500 CEO, but there she was. Elena Sterling sat in a back booth, nursing a black coffee. She wasn't wearing her usual power suit. She was in a cashmere sweater and jeans, looking less like a titan of industry and more like a woman who was tired of the game. I slid into the booth opposite her. Ms. Sterling, I said. She looked at me over the rim of her cup. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and unamused. You have a lot of nerve. Rosalie, sending me stolen internal documents. They're not stolen, I said. I wrote them. They're my property. And you think that matters to me? She asked. I'm about to close a $15 million deal. Do you think I care which Peterson signed the patent application? You care, I said, leaning forward. Because you know Tyler. You've sat across from him. You've heard him try to explain throughput metrics. You know he's a suit with no substance. And you know that if you sign that contract with him, and the system crashes 3 months from now, he won't know how to fix it. I will. Elena set her cup down. A slow smile spread across her face. You're right. I knew he was incompetent 5 minutes into our first meeting. I was going to pull the deal, until I got your email. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick document. The contract. My lawyers added a clause last night. A key man provision. Or in this case, a key person provision. She slid it across the table. It stipulates that the vendor warrants the lead architect of the proprietary technology is a current executive officer of the company. If it is discovered that the technology was misrepresented, or the talent behind it is no longer employed, the vendor owes a penalty fee. I scanned the clause. The penalty wasn't a slap on the wrist. It was a kill shot. $5 million. Immediate payment. If Gary signs this, Elena said. And then I reveal that I know Tyler didn't write the code. He's in breach. Instant bankruptcy. Why are you helping me? I asked. Elena looked out the window at the fog rolling off the river. My father left his company to my stepbrother. He said shipping was a rough business and I should focus on something softer. I started Sovereign with a loan and a grudge. I don't help you because you're a woman, Rosalie. I help you because you're the only person in that building who knows how the engine works. She stood up. The Port Authority Gala is tonight. Gary is planning a big signing ceremony on stage. Be there. I wasn't invited. I said. You are now. She dropped a VIP pass onto the table. Wear something sharp. It's going to be a bloodbath. I watched her walk out into the fog. I looked down at the pass. It was heavy. Laminated. And printed with my name. Not junior clerk. Just Rosalie Peterson. I went home. I didn't go to the mailroom. I went to my closet. I bypassed the sensible blazers and the practical slacks. I pulled out a dress I had bought for the Sovereign closing dinner that never happened. It was black. Structured. And severe. It looked less like evening wear and more like armor. I spent the afternoon preparing. I didn't just have the patent documents. I had everything. The emails Gary sent mocking the clients. The financial projections Tyler had falsified. The time-stamped logs of every time I had logged in to fix their mistakes. I loaded it all onto a secure USB drive. Tonight, Gary Peterson was going to try to sell a lie to the world. And I was going to be the one to check the receipt. The Savannah Port Authority Gala was a spectacle of excess. Chandeliers dripped from the ceiling like frozen rain. And the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and even more expensive ambition. Gary Peterson held court near the open bar. A glass of scotch in hand. Looking like a king surveying his kingdom. Tyler stood beside him, tugging at the collar of a tuxedo that didn't quite fit. Sweating under the lights, I stood at the back of the room, near the AV booth. I wasn't hiding. I was waiting. At 8 o'clock, the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. Gary walked up to the microphone. Beaming. Welcome. Everyone. He boomed. Tonight is a historic night for Peterson Logistics. For 40 years, I have built this company on one principle. Strength. And tonight, we cement that legacy. He gestured to the wings. I am proud to announce our partnership with the Sovereign Group. And I am even prouder to introduce the architect of this deal. My son, Tyler Peterson. Applause rippled through the room. Tyler walked onto the stage, waving awkwardly. He took the microphone. Thanks, Dad. It's been a lot of work. But we got it done. Gary clapped him on the back. And now, to sign the contract that will reshape global shipping, please welcome the CEO of the Sovereign Group, Ms. Elena Sterling. Elena walked onto the stage. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She walked to the podium and looked at Tyler. Mr. Peterson, she said. Her voice amplified through the hall. Before we sign, I have one question about the technical addendum. Tyler froze. Sure. The Deep Water Protocol, she said. Specifically, the load balancing algorithm on page 42. How did you account for the tidal variance in the Rotterdam port during the winter solstice? The room went silent. Gary stepped forward. Elena, surely we can discuss technicalities later. No. She cut him off. I want to hear it from the architect. Tyler? Tyler opened his mouth, then snapped it shut. He looked at Gary. Panic in his eyes. The team handled the specific coding. The team? Elena asked. But the patent application lists you as the sole inventor. She signaled the AV booth. The massive screen behind them flickered. It wasn't the Peterson logo anymore. It was a split screen. On the left, the patent application with Tyler's name. On the right, the metadata logs from the original source code. Author, Rosalie Peterson. Creation date, November 12, 2022. Location, Peterson Logistics Server. User terminal, Rosalie. A gasp went through the crowd. Gary turned. His face draining of color. Elena continued. Her voice cold and precise. Fraud is a serious accusation. Gary. But theft? Theft is personal. I stepped out from the shadows. The crowd parted. I walked toward the stage. My heels clicking on the marble floor. I didn't look at the audience. I looked at my father. He looked at me. And for the first time, I saw it. The emptiness. The fear. All his bluster. All his Peterson man rhetoric. It was just a facade. He was a hollow man who had rented his power from my competence. And now, the lease was up. I walked up the stairs. I didn't take the microphone. I simply handed Elena a folder. The real contract. The one with the key person clause. Here. I said. This is the only version that matters. Elena took it. She turned to Gary. Mr. Peterson, your company is currently in breach of contract due to misrepresentation of executive talent. Per the penalty clause, you owe the Sovereign Group $5 million. Payable immediately. $5 million? Gary choked. We don't have that kind of liquidity. Then I suggest you liquidate. Elena said. Because I don't do business with thieves. But I will do business with the owner of this algorithm. She turned to me. Rosalie, are you ready to discuss our partnership? I am. I said. I looked at Gary one last time. He was slumped against the podium. A king without a crown. Tyler was trying to hide behind him. You said global logistics require a man. I said, my voice carrying without the microphone. You were wrong. They require a brain. I turned and walked off the stage. Elena beside me. Behind us. The murmurs turned into a roar. The Peterson dynasty hadn't just fallen. It had been dismantled. Piece by piece. By the very person they tried to erase. The fallout wasn't a slow decline. It was a controlled demolition. By 9 a.m. the next morning, the stock value of Peterson Logistics had plummeted by 40%. By noon, the Apex Global buyout offer was formally rescinded. They cited material misrepresentation of assets and pending litigation regarding intellectual property. Gary tried to fight it. He tried to spin the narrative, claiming it was a misunderstanding. A clerical error. But you can't spin metadata. The U.S. Patent Office opened an investigation into fraud. The investors sued for breach of fiduciary duty. And Elena Sterling enforced the penalty clause with the ruthlessness of a surgeon. $5 million. Wired directly from Peterson Logistics' operating account to mine. It drained them. It left the company insolvent. Gary Peterson filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy 3 weeks later. He lost the headquarters. He lost the house on the river. He lost the legacy he was so desperate to preserve. Tyler didn't stick around to help pick up the pieces. He moved to Florida the moment the checks stopped clearing, blaming Gary for ruining his big break. I didn't watch the bankruptcy hearings. I didn't visit Gary in his new, a smaller apartment. I didn't answer the handwritten letters he sent, begging for a family meeting. I had already held my meeting. It was in the mailroom, amongst the shredders and the secrets. 6 months later, I stood in my new office. It wasn't in a basement. It was on the top floor of the Maritime Center, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlantic. The sign on the door didn't say junior clerk. It read Rosalie Strategic Logistics. I used the $5 million not to buy a yacht or a mansion, but to build something permanent. I launched my own consultancy firm, hiring the best female analysts in the industry, women who, like me, had been told they were too emotional for the shipping business. We were already profitable, but the real victory wasn't the profit margin. It was the letter I signed that morning. I established the Rosalie Maritime Scholarship for Women, a full-ride endowment for female students entering logistics and supply chain management. It included tuition, mentorship, and a guaranteed internship at my firm. This was the true justice. It wasn't just about destroying the old guard. It was about planting seeds for the new one. Revenge is punishing the person who hurt you. Justice is ensuring they can never hurt anyone like you ever again. I didn't just beat Gary Peterson. I built a ladder over his head so the next generation of women could climb without ever having to start in the basement. I looked out at the cargo ships cutting through the water, heavy with containers, moving the world forward. I took a sip of my coffee. It tasted like freedom. They told me global logistics required a man. They were right about one thing. It required strength. It required vision. And it required the kind of steady hand you only get after you've had to claw your way out of the dark. If you've ever had to build a ladder out of the wreckage someone else left behind, share this story. You never know who needs to hear that their competence is their armor.